The investment's already put in.
It's a good time for Canada, elbows up.
American farmers cast their votes with the belief that agriculture would return to its golden age. But by June 2025, when the EU announced a $20 billion global agriculture agreement, they did not choose the United States. They chose Canada. Not a single headline on the front pages of major newspapers. Yet the consequences are spreading across America. Silos in Nebraska sit empty as export shipments are rejected. In Washington, seasonal workers have disappeared fearing immigration crackdowns. You think this doesn't affect you? Take another look at this month's grocery bill. Think about the child who once dreamed of taking over the family farm, now disillusioned because farming no longer offers a future. And in today's video, we'll break down the 5 most important reasons why the EU chose Canada over the United States in the $20 billion global agriculture deal. Number 1. The US caught in multiple quality scandals. Canada prevails with a dual inspection system. The deal has been signed, $20 billion. The US name nowhere near the priority list. At the end of June 2025, the European Union announced a series of new agricultural trade contracts with Canada worth over $20 billion in total. Not a comprehensive free trade agreement, but large enough to redraw the export map of an entire industry. Beef, wheat, dairy, fresh vegetables, organic foods, nearly all premium product categories now originate from Canada, and the striking fact the US was not chosen. For those familiar with international trade, this may not be a surprise, but for many American farmers, it felt like a bucket of cold water, not just because of the monetary value, but because the position that once belonged to them now goes to a quiet neighbor. The question everyone is asking is why? Why would a country that once dominated global agriculture be left out of such a major deal? The first and most important reason the European Union chose Canada over the US in the $20 billion agricultural agreement is trust in inspection. This deal is not the kind of free trade agreement people often imagine. It is a series of long-term supply contracts where supermarket chains, distributors and logistics systems in the EU select partners to provide food for years to come. Every food line falls into the premium segment: beef, high-quality grains, organic milk, fresh vegetables, processed seafood. And in the list of suppliers Canada was chosen, the US was not. This comes as a surprise, not because the $20 billion figure is too large, but because this was once a default position for the US. For decades, Americans were used to being the chef of the world, supplying everything from corn to beef, flour to soybeans. And yet now the most premium market has chosen to go with their neighbor. To many in Washington, this is a big issue. But for farmers in Iowa or Kansas, it's a quieter feeling something has been lost and no one gave advance notice. What excluded the US from this deal wasn't low-quality products. On the contrary, many American farms still maintain very high standards. But in the eyes of Europeans, quality is no longer about who says it's better, but who can prove it clearly, consistently, and transparently. And in that regard, Canada is one step ahead. Since 2023, they've implemented a dual inspection system. Each shipment must pass 2 rounds of checks, one under Canadian standards, and one that meets the EU's specific requirements. All information is digitized, encrypted, batch traceable, and synchronized with the databases of major importers in Europe. No more excessive paperwork, no more subjective explanations. Just scan the code, verify the data, and the shipment is approved. What about US goods? Not every shipment has issues, but the control system is not unified. Each state, each company, each distribution chain has its own method of verifying quality, and in Europe that's not enough. Some containers were held in Rotterdam. Some shipments delayed clearance due to mismatched traceability codes. No major scandals, but bit by bit trust declined, and people started opting for the simpler choice Canada. If you were standing at the port of Hamburg, you might have seen it. Canadian containers offloaded and sent directly to supermarket chains. US containers went through another round of testing just to confirm nothing was wrong. No one said it out loud, but the outcome was clear. One side is trusted from the start, the other must be rechecked. To many American farmers, the feeling is like being disqualified from a competition without being told the rules had changed. They still did everything the same, woke up early, farmed, cleanly packaged properly, but their goods were no longer chosen. Not because they were wrong, but because they couldn't prove enough to earn trust. And this isn't just about exports. Losing market share in the EU means fewer orders, shorter transport routes, reduced overtime at packaging plants. Truck drivers hauling frozen foods from the Midwest to the East Coast lose their runs. Cold storage workers in Texas lose night shifts. The ripple effects spread, though you won't see them on the front page. Perhaps the hardest thing to accept isn't that Canada did better, it's that Canada did it quietly and was chosen, while the US kept trying but was excluded without understanding why. Canada didn't advertise, they didn't give presentations, they just submitted data. Every pack of meat, every bag of vegetables, every box of flour came with clear evidence that it was clean safe and exactly as promised. The US, still producing more, but missing one key thing: verifiable trust. And notably, this is only the first reason the EU chose Canada. Number 2, the US chases volume. Canada invests in new high-quality breeds. After a series of warnings about chemical residues, traceability inspections, and increasingly stringent standards in Europe, the US was officially removed from the list of premium food suppliers in the $20 billion deal with the EU. But the question is, if the issue lies in quality and supply chain transparency, why was Canada the chosen replacement? The answer lies in a deeper difference, not just in inspection methods, but in how the two countries think about food production. Because quality doesn't come only from post-inspection, it starts with the mindset in planting, raising, and breeding. For years, the US has operated under a familiar formula: produce more, faster, cheaper. The production system is optimized to generate hundreds of millions of tons of grain, meat, and milk each year. Every hectare of land, every cow, every cornfield is translated into numbers and yields. With strong infrastructure and government support, the US became the food factory for dozens of countries. And to be fair, this model once worked very effectively. The US built a powerful export position across many markets from the Middle East and East Asia to South America. But the problem is, the global market is changing. And so are consumer preferences. Consumers, especially in Europe, increasingly prioritize products tailored to their needs: more refined flavors, precise tenderness, clear origin, and a sense of trust when placing it on the dinner table. They don't buy just because you have a lot. They buy because you understand them. This is the gap Canada saw and quietly closed over nearly a decade. While the US continued to chase volume, Canada focused on quality at its root. They invested in crop and cattle breeds, processing and packaging, all aimed at one thing: creating products that match the exact taste of their target markets. They didn't try to do everything for everyone, they chose to do one thing right for the right people. If you visit Alberta or Saskatchewan, you'll see farms that are not noisy. They don't aim to increase herd size every year. They aim to create consistent, stable products that meet increasingly sophisticated standards from European importers.
Well, it isn't every day an animal that typically calls Japan home can be raised in Canada, but one Saskatchewan farmer has found a way to make it work.
Beef is a prime example. The cattle breeds raised in Alberta, especially the snow beef line, aren't designed for mass production, but specifically for the premium segment. Fine marbling, a delicate sweet aftertaste, and precisely calibrated tenderness according to French culinary standards. This is the kind of beef European chefs describe as needing little seasoning because every slice already tells a flavor story. Thanks to this beef, Canada secured a place on the menu of numerous Michelin 2-star restaurants in Brussels, Lyon, and Munich. Some high-end food retail chains in Germany and Scandinavia even stock snow beef with the label "seasonal exclusive product." Snow beef has even appeared at culinary expos in Japan, a country considered the home of beef artistry. Several Japanese chefs have rated this beef as a worthy candidate for the segment between Wagyu A4 and A5, not to compete, but to offer global diners a new alternative. Meanwhile, American beef, once a national pride, still maintains its output, but has lost its position in the eyes of premium customers. Industrial cattle breeds in Texas and Nebraska increasingly serve fast growth and mass distribution goals, gradually losing the refinement in texture and taste. What used to be a delicacy is now just a high-volume product, and the US, still a production powerhouse, still strong, still able to sell to South Korea, and developing countries places that still prefer bulk volume and competitive prices. But the unfortunate truth is they've lost the most premium segment, the one that is expensive, demanding, and shapes global taste: Europe. And losing Europe isn't just losing money, it's losing status. Europeans don't buy in large quantities, but they set trends. When a product is accepted in this market, the chance to expand to other premium markets multiplies. And once you no longer have a seat at that table, it's very hard to get it back. Ask the farmers in Nebraska or Kansas, places that were once centers of grain and beef exports to the world. Many still maintain stable production, still follow the right techniques, but European orders no longer return. Longtime partners go silent, trade meetings grow sparse, replaced by new questions. What breed is your product? Is it consistent? Does it suit the regional palate questions not everyone can clearly answer? Canada doesn't produce to sell to as many people as possible. They produce to be chosen. And they have been chosen. The US can come back. The resources are still there. The infrastructure is still strong. But if the mindset doesn't change, if they continue believing that sheer volume can solve everything, then future deals will keep naming someone else. Because in today's food industry, the key question is no longer how much you produce, but who you produce it for. Canada chose to serve the most demanding customers, and they succeeded. The US still produces for everyone, but no one is truly waiting anymore. This $20 billion deal isn't just a redistribution of market share. It's a reminder that if you don't change your thinking, the market will change its partner. And when we look closely at the deeper reasons the EU shifted its preference, we'll see another crucial factor. One we'll uncover next. Number 3. The US changes too quickly. Canada quietly commits to long-term stability. In global trade, no one wants to sign a long-term contract with a partner whose tweet today could change everything. In a market that values consistency and predictability, like the EU, those factors are no longer just sufficient conditions. Buyers now no longer ask simply, "What do you have?" They ask, "Can you keep your word?" Since the beginning of the year, US trade has undergone many changes. Tariffs adjusted preferential lists, reviewed signals about agricultural export policies appearing and disappearing. For some, this is a flexible way to protect national interests. But for partners across the ocean, it's a sign of what they most want to avoid: political risk in trade contracts. In agricultural trade, the worst thing isn't high prices. It's not knowing what tomorrow will bring. Just one line changed in a tax policy can freeze an order under negotiation. When it happens once, it's seen as an exception. When it happens repeatedly, customers start looking elsewhere to sign deals. Not because they hate America, just because they need peace of mind. And Canada, quietly, offers them exactly that. Since signing CETA in 2017, Canada has maintained its principles. Avoid tariff retaliation, avoid administrative interference in trade contracts, and focus on long-term commitments with European partners. For nearly a decade, supply chains between Canada and the EU have run smoothly with no major disruptions. That has made them the preferred choice, not because they're the strongest country, but because they give others the least reason to worry. And if you only look at the policy chart, you might not see the full issue. But just take one step back and observe what's happening on US soil, and you'll see even domestic supply chains are no longer as stable as they used to be. In the early months of the year, many farms in California, Florida, and Arizona, which specialize in exports, were forced to scale down. Not necessarily because of prices, but because the seasonal labor force vanished. As immigration control policies tightened, many workers no longer dared to work openly. Some fled, others moved to less regulated states. The farms remained. The fields were still there, but machines can't run on their own. Hundreds of thousands of acres couldn't be cultivated or harvested on schedule because of a lack of people. From the outside, this seems like an internal matter, but to buyers in Europe, they don't care where the risk comes from. They see only one thing: the threat of disruption. And that alone is enough to push them to seek alternatives. And while the US is still busy renegotiating parts of trade deals, Canada is already present in Brussels. They didn't request any changes. They simply submitted a clear dossier, a transparent delivery schedule, and one message: we're still honoring our original commitments. No need to promise more, just don't change. That feeling for Europeans is priceless. They already have too much to worry about: climate change, energy prices, geopolitical conflict. They don't need one more source of anxiety from their food supplier. In the latest analyses from EFSA and major import agencies in Germany, France and Belgium, the emphasized phrase isn't good price, but predictable supply. And the US, though rich in resources, is lacking in just that. From trade policy to labor conditions to domestic logistics. Instability isn't any one person's fault, but everyone pays the price. In its June 2025 report, IFPRI estimates that current trade volatility could cost the US about 1.2% of its agricultural GDP in the next 12 months. but numbers don't fully capture the feeling on the ground. For farmers, the most painful thing isn't competition. It's not knowing if they'll still have customers next year. And Canada. They don't need to win the market, they just need to be there. But at the right time, in the right place, and with the right commitment. And the irony is, it's precisely their lack of change that has made them trustworthy in the eyes of a market weary of unpredictability. When you can't predict what will come from a big partner, the safer option, even if smaller, will win out. The EU's $20 billion deal isn't a reward for the strongest nation. It's a choice for the one that gives the most peace of mind. And this time, the US wasn't the one chosen. In the modern agricultural world, large output isn't enough. What's also needed is something importers now see as a survival criterion: stability. In policy, in supply chains, and in people. The US is lacking all three. And that's why they're being slowly pushed out of contracts they once assumed were guaranteed. Number 4. Canada leads in emission reduction tech. The US hasn't caught up. If you think agriculture is just about fields and weather, then you've missed a global climate game already underway in the marketplace. In just a few years, the demand for clean farming, clean raising has gone beyond local consumer concerns. It has become a mandatory standard in international trade contracts. And in Europe, one of the strictest markets, this is being reinforced by the CBAM policy, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism for imported goods, officially in full effect from mid-2025. This is no longer a warning, it is law, and it directly impacts nations that once dominated the agri-export scene, like the US. You might think that as long as food is clean, pesticide-free, hormone-free, non-GMO, then it's good enough. But for the EU today, good isn't enough. They want to know how much CO2 did you emit to produce it, and can you prove it? This question seems simple, but it clearly draws the line between the US and Canada in the recent $20 billion agriculture deal the EU signed. While the US is still struggling to build a federal-level agricultural emissions measurement system, Canada has quietly taken the lead. Since 2022, the Canadian government has launched the Climate Smart Agriculture Program, coordinating among farmers, research institutes, and environmental agencies to synchronize emissions data from farms to exports. Not just cutting, but measuring, recording, verifying, and proving. In provinces like Alberta and Saskatchewan, many farms can now print QR codes directly on packages, allowing buyers to trace the info how this product was grown or raised, how much energy transportation consumed, and the total CO2 emitted per kilogram of final product. This isn't marketing, it's a condition to avoid taxation. Under CBAM, if you can't prove your emissions, the EU defaults to the highest possible value, potentially adding 10 to 20% tax to every shipment. In an industry where margins are sometimes just a few cents per pound, that margin can break a contract. And Canada doesn't just avoid tax, they're also prioritized. Because besides low emissions, they meet another condition: their data tracking system is EU approved. In the US, too many pieces remain unconnected. Each state tracks differently. Some farms do well with tools measuring emissions from tractors and greenhouses, but most still rely on estimates. They're not wrong, they just can't prove it. And in long-term trade contracts, only one question matters: who is more trustworthy? The one with a ready system, or the one still piloting? This situation isn't just on paper. At major European ports, goods are already being sorted by carbon documentation. Containers from Canada go through fast lanes. Complete data valid coding. Containers from the US, if missing certification, are held for random checks. No scandal, no violation, just procedure. But that procedure alone is enough to make EU retailers nervous. Think about it: if you're managing supply chains for a supermarket in Germany, which supplier would you choose? The one who triggers inspections and risks taxes, or the one who proves everything before you even ask? That's why no one was surprised when the EU signed a new Agri-Deal with Canada, because Canada doesn't just send products, they send data process and commitment. Meanwhile, the US, though still strong in output, is falling behind in a new game where emissions are a form of trade currency. They aren't lacking in capability. They're lacking a unified system to turn quality into evidence. In many states, farmers are ready to switch to low-carbon farming, but what they need is federal support to connect with international standards, something Canada achieved early on. So the issue no longer lies in the fields, but at the systemic level. The difference lies in approach. The US is still reacting in parts. Piloting, issuing guidelines, negotiating policy. Canada quietly chose to act. Integrating data syncing procedures and placing files in European trade offices ready to submit when needed. Europeans don't want endless negotiations. They just want to know, are you ready? And when one side is still finishing its measurement system while the other is already delivering with full carbon certification, the choice becomes clear. In a recent summary from the International Food Policy Research Institute, IFPRI, delays in carbon tracking could cost the US 10 to 12 dollars per ton on EU-bound shipments. That may sound small, but on a 300,000-ton contract, that's over $3 million lost, just for failing to prove cleanliness. The climate game in agriculture isn't just about who's cleaner. It's about who can prove they're clean, right when the market demands it. Canada moved first. If the US doesn't speed up, there may not be enough time to catch up. Number 5. The US wants to dominate. Canada chooses harmony with EU standards and culture. There is one thing Europeans highly value, especially in long-term trade relationships: clarity in how you present yourself. It's not just about what you're selling, but the spirit you bring with you. And when you look at how the US and Canada work with the EU in agriculture, that difference becomes clearer than ever. The US often walks into negotiations with a big bag inside are not only grains, beef, or dairy, but also issues far beyond the farm. From aluminum tariffs and battery taxes to public investment policies, everything is bundled into a broader strategy, and the EU understands that. They've grown used to the American way of doing business, but it doesn't always sit comfortably with them. Canada, on the other hand, is different. They don't bring any big package. They only bring exactly what the partner cares about: product quality stability and specific commitments directly tied to that sector. Topics like climate policy or transport standards are also mentioned, but not as leverage, rather as facilitators for mutual cooperation. This contrast became especially stark in early 2025. The US had just imposed a new round of tariffs on European goods, not targeting agricultural products, but enough to make negotiations tense. Several agreements that seemed close to signing with the US were suddenly delayed as European partners wanted to wait and see the political fallout. And Canada. They had nothing to do with that tension. They just kept sending standardized technical dossiers, updated carbon metrics, and quietly finalized several long-term organic food supply contracts without laying down any special conditions. This isn't about moving faster or slower. It's about choosing a way of moving that makes it easier for others to walk alongside you. In many parts of the EU, Canadian food is no longer seen as foreign, but more like an extension of the domestic market. Not because it's cheaper or more prominent, but because it feels familiar. From labeling, adjusting technical parameters, to hosting workshops in each country and translating standards into local languages, they've done everything to blend into how the EU operates. Meanwhile, the US still approaches things top-down. Trade associations and promotional delegations often come to Europe in the spirit of showcasing excellence, very impressive, but also fleeting. When there's a small change in labeling or traceability regulations, Canada knew about it 3 months ago via regular dialogue channels. The US, in many cases, is still searching for the English version of the document. If you're a corn grower in Iowa or a cattle farmer in Texas, these things might sound distant. You don't need to fly to Frankfurt or Paris to meet partners, but you do need someone to do it for you. An organization, an association, an office, anyone who can maintain that connection. Without them, you'd be shipping products without knowing what's changing on the other end. And the point is, it's not that the US lacks capability. We have quality products, modern farming tech, and amazing farmers. What's missing is a bridge between our fields and the markets across the ocean. Canada built that bridge step by step. Canadian food is now not only clean, but also easy to understand, easy to trace, and easy to work with. For a retailer in Germany or Belgium, that's the peace of mind they need in an already volatile supply chain. The US can still compete, but to do that, it can't rely on productivity or price alone. We need to relearn how to harmonize. Sometimes the winner isn't the one who moves faster, but the one who walks in the right direction in the right way. And perhaps the hardest thing for many Americans isn't technical, it's emotional. That the US isn't always the center. That no one is waiting for us to arrive just because we used to be number one. For those who lived through the post-W22 golden era, when American goods flooded the world, and a Made in USA label alone earned trust, having to explain, adjust, and prove ourselves to others, might feel like a step back. But the world has changed, and maybe it's time for the US to stop clinging to the throne and instead seize the chance for real connection. Instead of trying to do everything our way and expecting others to adapt, the US, especially in agriculture, could embrace a new role. An equal flexible partner who respects the global ecosystem. A trustworthy friend, not necessarily bigger or louder, but always there when needed. In fact, many American farmers are starting to realize this and are proactively changing. In Illinois, a group of corn and soybean cooperatives is working with a private trade organization to set up a contact point in Brussels, not to open a flashy office, but simply to have someone reply to emails in the right language and time zone. In Oregon, a group of organic fruit growers is asking the state to help fund participation in the Biofosch Fair in Germany, not to sign contracts on the spot, but to meet, explain, and listen. They understand that when the EU changes plant labeling guidelines, it's not to make life difficult, it's because they see food as culture and they expect their partners to understand that too. Some trade associations in California and Iowa are also petitioning the USDA to expand the Agricultural Trade Office program to second-tier European cities, places without a US presence, but with high import demand. They don't expect America to change overnight. But they do want an extended hand, a support system, so that family farms don't have to bear the burden of global connection alone. We've just walked through the 5 key reasons why the US, once the dominant force in global agriculture, is now being sidelined from the EU's $20 billion table. Not because we're weak, but because the world changed faster than we expected. Canada isn't bigger than the US, but they chose to walk with the market instead of ahead of it, and that has made all the difference. This video isn't about blaming anyone, it's not anti-American, and it doesn't promote division. It's simply a reminder it's time to rethink how we do agriculture, how we manage policy, and how we build trust with partners. If we don't change, even our closest markets will walk away quietly but decisively. Do you think we can change that? Do you think American farmers deserve the support to upgrade and keep pace with the world? If you're asking the same questions, share your thoughts below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next videos where we continue to break down what mainstream media often overlooks.